Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of a Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Welcome newcomers to the Facebook group and to the podcast. We always love hearing the diverse reasons why teachers across the world are joining. We love that we ask the question, that people just let us know briefly what it is that brings them to the Facebook group and to the podcasts. And there's just so much deep and creative literacy work going on in schools. So some of the recent comments from a teacher: I love the podcast and have learned so much. I would love to join this group to share more ideas. Another teacher: my school is designing a vocabulary curriculum, and there's certainly some good vocabulary, especially professional readings there. We've got a lot of professional readings. I'm already getting tangential here, but a lot of professional readings to support those kinds of big work that people are trying to do in schools. Another one has said, I would like to continue to broaden my knowledge of best practice. This is particularly pertinent in my setting due to pressure to adopt programs, which I do not believe should take the place of quality teaching and learning. Hear, hear. I have already listened to this is another one. I have already listened to most of the podcasts. I've taken book recommendations, tools for vocabulary and comprehension. My favourite inclusion is quick writes. Thank you. One of my favourites too. And last one, and we love that we're not always focusing for secondary, but I'm so glad people in secondary settings are also finding places to connect with us through the podcast. And this one is, I'm looking for ideas, resources and support to effectively implement reading and writing workshops in my secondary English classes. So thank you to everybody for sharing with us as you join. And if you're not a member of the Teacher's Toolkit Facebook group, we'd love you to join and introduce yourself to the group. So welcome to this podcast called Morning Message as a High Impact Tool. And welcome to our co-host Phil.
Thank you, Sharon. Great to be here.
Lovely to have you. It always is, can't do this on my own. It's so good to be able to be in conversation, which is what we really are encouraging through this group and through, we know the power of having collegial conversations, and we hope that conversations that we have here help you to feel that you can also be, I know you can't join in the conversation. We've had plenty of people say they wish that they were just sitting here too with us to be in conversation. But we hope that this helps you to feel part of the professional learning and conversations that we can have around so many different topics. So I've chosen, where has today's topic come from? And morning message is a high impact tool. Over the last couple of weeks in particular, I've been talking a lot about using the morning message as part of a daily routine in the literacy block or the English block in the morning. So I thought, whilst I've been talking mostly with junior primary teachers around that, I'm really hoping as when I was working with older students in my classroom, I would definitely include a morning message. And I think they have a place across primary, secondary, maybe even into tertiary. And we'll talk more about what it is as a tool and and why I'm bringing this one to you, but it's definitely coming out of work that or conversations I've been in over the last few weeks, and I thought it would be really valuable to bring it to everyone today. So, what might be the teaching struggle that is prompting me to even raise with teachers the idea of incorporating a morning message? One of the struggles is really about, particularly in the time frame that we are in at the moment. So as we're recording, we're in 2022, and we're still in a time where we don't always have every child with us every day because of with flu or COVID, that they might not, and they might be in and out a little bit with our class. So a lot of teachers have said, one of the things I've found a little bit harder this year is really building relationships and community with my class. And so the morning message, we'll talk about how does that help with that. So that's kind of grown out of a particular thing in this era, shall I say, place and time for that. Another reason that the morning message will come up is talking about using the morning message as a tool, is to think about when we're trying to fit everything in the day, what's a little routine. So whilst I've called it a tool, it's also a morning, I call it morning message. Of course, if we're doing our literacy block at another time of day, we might call it afternoon message. But morning message is more than just linking to literacy. It is about how can we bring a whole lot of the things about the day, how can we connect, make some connections to what this day is going to bring for us that we can have in written form for our students. And so for them to be able to enter the classroom in the morning to know that there is either going to be a morning message there waiting for them or a morning message that's going to be written in front of them as the day begins, it becomes one of those routines. I was talking with one teacher the other day where we talked about, this is like a great little warm-up for the literacy block or the English block. So maybe we could call it a warm-up activity, a relationship building or community building activity, or routine. I should say routine. And we'll talk more about how that plays out. So the things that we'll have a look at today are, what is a morning message? And a lot of you, if you've heard that term before, it's used to define a lot of different things. So we'll explore today a bit about what makes a morning message. So what is it and what isn't it? So what it's really for. And I guess that's the biggest thing that I want to talk about today is that when we know what we can use the morning message to achieve, then we'll know how to make it our own. But we do need to know what it is we want. What's the purpose of it? What are we wanting to achieve with it? So that we're not locked into thinking, well, it is going to look just like this every day of the year. And does it exist every day of the year? So we'll talk about some practical how-tos, possible how-tos. You know us, we're not into a script. This is all about what's the potential. That's what I always love exploring, is what's the potential of something, and for everybody to own it in the way that they can see how it's used with the highest impact in their classroom. Tips, tricks, techniques for it being high impact. So what makes it high impact as opposed to a burden or just a trudge every day to, that we've got to do this. It's not about that, but how to make the things to think about. So tips, tricks, techniques for making it high impact. Where it might fit in the day. And the big one overriding all of this is, how does it have purpose and meaning within our routine? So here we go. Let's actually, anything you want to add there, Phil?
No, I guess you'll get down to the nitty-gritty of how to make one.
Good point.
Towards the end. Yeah. Or at the beginning.
Yeah, well, in the tips, tricks, techniques, but yes, remind me to do that. Ask me again if I haven't covered that.
Because I know you've got nifty ways of creating these things. Yep.
Yeah, well, I've tried lots of different things and I've seen lots of ways people have tried it where we can see that's the impact that it's having. So let's delve in. So what is a morning message? So when we talk about that we might begin a day with a morning message is really what we have. It's a letter. So message, it's a letter to, so we're addressing our class. And that might be, and that can vary. What if I want to address the class with different salutations? So it might begin, dear class, or it might begin with a question, guess what's happening today, class, or it's something that is addressing them to get them in. It might be if we have, or if we're exploring different cultures or languages or whatever, we might link it to that. So it's not a set, it's the same thing every day. And so it's really a letter to your class, which is just bringing them together at the beginning of the day as community. Now, what's on that message?
It's got to have purpose.
It's got to have purpose. So what do I want? What do I want to do through this message? What is it that this message is going to be about? It really isn't more than, in our junior primary, it might be one sentence. A bit older, there might be a couple of sentences, 2 or 3. But it's short. You're not writing a tome, you are writing a message. So what kinds of things would that be about? Maybe it's about things happening today. Maybe it's whose birthday it is. Maybe it's in older classes. It might be something that's going to activate their thinking about what we're doing today. So it might be like the hook to get them in. It might be that the focus of it, the purpose of it, we can really change that up depending on, so whether do we want this to have a writing focus, a reading focus, like what is it that is the purpose of it? And I'm really going to break that down into sections in a little bit. But one of the things that a morning message really isn't, and that is a slide on the whiteboard, because that, and I know for some people that's like the time saver, that I can prepare my slides ahead of time, but particularly for our younger readers and writers, it is so good if they can see a handwritten message to them. That's just different. When it's coming from, I can see my teacher's handwriting there. And I did say that some morning messages, we come into the class and it's there already. It's written. And so what does that mean now? That means we get the opportunity to read that. So it might be visible as we come in, and so that we know one of the first things we're going to swing past is, where's the morning message? Let me read it. With our younger ones, we're also using it as an opportunity to let's read it together. So it really becomes a shared reading activity or a shared reading opportunity.
All eyes on the text.
All eyes on the text. So then that brings us back to, if with that in mind and that as a purpose, I'm writing it large enough so everyone can see it. So I found one of the best tools for me writing my morning message is an A3 sized art folio. So those spiral bound A3 sheet books. And that's large enough for me to be able to write in large enough writing, to, for everybody to see and for everybody to read. Now, why am I putting it in a book? And why isn't it a slide? Because a slide's going to disappear. But a book, if I've written it in a book, I've now got access. As a child, I've got access to that book. I've got access to going back to it, finding, when did we do such and such? When it becomes another text for them to read in the class. And it's highly purposeful reading because it's about them. It's messages to them as a class. So it doesn't have to be, it could be A3 paper stapled together that I was using. I don't necessarily have to buy, a book ready-made, but the idea of it being an ongoing, every day, something is there. Now, every day, let me just come back to that one. So, for example, some of the one of the teachers that I'm working with at the moment hasn't started a morning message book, but it's not too late. It's the middle of the year, but it's not too late to start one. So if I haven't got one every day, if I haven't started it at the beginning of the year and so I haven't got it every day, it doesn't matter. But I do have to think back to, so what's my purpose for it? So right now, this is the perfect time for this teacher to bring that into the class and to use it for two purposes. She's going to use it not just that they'll be able to read that morning message, but she's also going to use it where she can model, so she can write the morning message in front of them. Why does she want to do that? Because she's right now wanting them to move into using more writing strategies, so that as she's modelling or as she's writing, she's now modelling the strategies that she's using to write. So she's talking about capitalisation, she might be talking about, this word here, that's a word we've learnt, it might be the word the. Right, I can write that one. I don't even need to check on a word wall or check for any resources to find out how to spell that. And modelling this thinking that she's doing as she's writing. So that's going to be the purpose for the first few weeks of this coming term, so that she can start getting them transferring, because they're seeing her model it. And when it comes to them moving on to their writing, it means they're going to get an everyday piece for a while of her modelling her thinking as she's writing and what tools she's using to do that. Do I still reference an alphabet chart if I'm wanting to know how that letter is formed? Or do I reference, other resources in the room? And what if I'm trying a word that I don't know how to spell? What strategies am I using to write that word? So thinking of what sound do I hear? So for every sound I hear in the word, I'm writing a letter or letters. And that's me using what I know to write as best as I can. So where did I start with this?
And I think the really good thing is, Sharon, with that, she's doing it in a book, isn't she?
Yes.
That she can go back to the previous morning messages, and the children can at any time.
Yes.
To review something that's happened this week or last week or so forth.
Yes. And the really powerful piece about it is for those children who've been away, they love coming in to read what were the morning messages for the days that I was away. A lot of people during COVID, if they were working with their students or were on Zoom with students, were still sending a morning message or taking a photo of a handwritten morning message or still even writing a morning message in front of them. Because it just, isn't it a lovely routine? You know, it's like, I think, just in our family, our morning messages to each other are all via messenger or a message on the phone, but we look forward to that.
Yeah, but handwriting is so personal to the person, isn't it? It's part of your character, your persona, to your style.
Yes, yeah. Yep. So the handwriting, and students do need to see us. If we're asking them to be handwriting, they need to have opportunities to see us handwriting. And how we are, doesn't matter what age they are really, that what it is that, how we're writing that. Like you say, if we've got a particular style, in the Australian curriculum it talks about us developing our own style as a handwriter. So if I'm writing a message, handwriting it, our students get to see our style of writing.
So it's literacy and handwriting combined, isn't it? And I mean, you're also looking at other subject areas, but we won't go there. But, it's a whole lot of things it can be.
Yes. So then if we looked at how we can, what focus or what purpose we could have for our morning message, if our focus was, we could have a reading focus. So in reading that morning message, what I've written for the morning message may allow us to practice a reading process. So it may allow us to briefly practice our fluency, or it might allow us to practice, maybe I've written my morning message as a poem. How do we read? How do we read that? So reading processes. What if I've put some vocabulary in there that we've been, that's come up in content areas? What if I've added vocabulary in there, or new vocabulary that is interesting and intriguing? So remember before I said about a morning message should be there. It's about activating. It's activating. So whether it's reading, which I'm talking about at the moment, and I'll talk a bit in a moment about writing, but I might include some vocabulary in there to, okay, what if we're going to use our background knowledge of what, there's a base word in there. Let's use our knowledge of that to work out this, to help us understand what this sentence says. So, or I might write a sentence where I'm really wanting them to do some inferring, or I want them to make a prediction about something. So in terms of what am I doing as a reader with this sentence, I can construct a message in ways, like really interesting ways, to have my students using the strategies that we're currently exploring and working with and trying out and using. So that's not about making it a big complex. This isn't a maxi lesson here, the morning message. I said this is maybe a sentence or two, even for our older ones, we don't necessarily need much more than that. Reading processes, things like, so here's a word that we don't know. How do we tackle it? How do we solve it? And then how do we understand it? We might have included in that sentence or those couple of sentences sounds or digraphs or blends that we've been working with, and we're including some of those in there for students to notice. If writing was my focus, what if we are currently writing in a particular text type and I write my morning message within that type of text? So if it was informational, I might write it in an informational way. Maybe I've even got a heading. Maybe I've got, so then I might have some of the features of informational writing reflected in what I've done. I might include a diagram. I might include a cutaway or a sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we're writing some historical fiction at the moment? What if I write in that style? What does that mean? I'm writing about an event that really happened with characters that that didn't necessarily exist. How do I write a morning message with that? What if I write a morning message thinking about poetry? What if I write a morning message thinking about a particular author? So Alison Marsh, who's done podcasts for us around, she talked about the Gary Crew unit they did. They knew how to write. They said, I'm going to write like Gary Crew. This is how he would say it. So if we've got an author on the go, what if I write my morning message as that author would write it? So then what are we doing? Then we're finding some voice in writing. What if I write two sentences, one that's got some wonderful parts to it, and so a really rich example of a beautiful, complex sentence, and then what if I also finish that with a short, it's a big long sentence, and then I've got, a 3-word sentence that finishes off to show, wow, here's how I incorporate sentences of different lengths. So what I think the morning message really, I think its biggest impact for us as teachers is that in writing something each day for our students, it's actually getting us growing as writers ourselves. Because if we're thinking about what are all the different things that what would be the thing to really have my students notice in this morning message today, not just notice, that we need to do this or this is happening today or blah, blah, blah. What if I wrote it in a way that allowed children to notice something?
I think that really connects with what Alan Wright was saying about teachers getting involved in the writing process.
Yes.
And students seeing that as one of the biggest things you can do to change what's happening in writing in your classroom.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I think the morning message really can extend us and I think excite us and really grow us as writers by thinking, all right, how do I write? Like if I'm going to write a message every day, wow, what are all the ways I could do that? In what way can I use writing to bring ideas and bring a message to my children? So for me, I think it really helps us to build our own interest in writing, to strengthen us as writers, to engage us in writers. When you Google morning message, you'll find 1,000 things about, that's probably an understatement, millions of things about morning message. And one of the things I frequently see about that is, and maybe this is more to do with marketing than anything, but, I'm really, I can't think of what to write for a morning message each day. But here's a whole lot that I've made that you can use. That's what are we doing morning message for then?
That's defeating the purpose.
Yeah, yeah. But a one sentence or a one something from us each day, I think is just so powerful for our students will actually see us as writers. We will feel so much more empowered ourselves as writers. And if we're really thinking of that idea of if we write something, what can students notice in this? What is it that, like, we're already bringing something to them then that is a model for them. It's not that morning message isn't now about, okay, I wrote this morning message, now go and do one of your own. It's not go and do this. Or sometimes I've seen morning message used where, now all go and copy the morning message down. It's not about that. But the noticing as a reader or as a writer, what's happening here?
So it's communicating what you with your class directly in some things that are happening today, but it's a multi-purpose to it too, isn't it? It's not just that. It's let's add some things in about writing or word work or reading that we're currently focusing on, or an author. There's a multi-purpose to it, but there's also the main purpose of just simply communicating with your class about some things that you're wanting them to, or could be.
It could be, but communicating is the word.
Yep.
And being together.
Yep.
On this. This is a message for all of us.
Yep. It could be just a fun message, couldn't it?
It could be a fun message. It could be an insight. It could be a
proverb or
a proverb, a thought, so
I think that's interesting to explore that, because people might just think it's, these are your jobs for today or whatever, or, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
What are the expansive ideas that we can have that morning message could be?
Yes.
That would be, that's another podcast maybe. But
no, because I think that's from here.
Yep.
That's exactly what, I would love, on the Facebook group after this podcast, for people to be saying, how have they used it?
Yeah.
Like
what other potential users?
Yes. Yeah. And so I think we've at teaching at any age level, I think everybody would be able to see that a morning message has got a life. It's not just about the, for our, beginning writers and our beginning readers, that there is bigger potential for it across, because it is about community building. Us together as a class, and that this has been created just for us by somebody who is trying things out and letting us know what we can be exploring, what we can be trying out, what we can not try out right in this moment, but because we've written it across a year or across a term. What if we just did it for a term? That daily act of writing something for somebody as a teacher, and it's not a program, We are writing something for those in front of us.
And here we are with something that can be used from 5-year-olds to secondary.
Yes, and beyond.
And beyond.
Beyond. So, I think when I hear, people say, I don't know what to write on a morning message, we have to think, so what are we asking our children to do? Do we ever hear our children say that? What am I going to write? We need to be the writer in there with our students. And I think the morning message is a really a good habit for us to be in, to think, what's for today? What is it that I want to share with my class today in this really small but powerful way?
And I love the way you've brought in one of our timeless teas, Sharon, together.
Yes.
Because bringing your class together is just vital, isn't it, for your for their learning?
Yes. Let's go back to tools, because if I was whenever I'm working with the younger grades, I always recommend, and it just makes sense, to work with like that A3 size and landscape. Because if we have a portrait, the page isn't wide enough for us to write in a font large enough for everybody to see. So it requires landscape. And in fact, landscape works because we're only writing a small amount, a sentence or so. That landscape A3 size seems to work quite well for everybody. Now, I did mention before that I suppose that making it the tool that it is, that if we've always got a place for it, so this is where the morning message always is. So that means we want to be able to rest it somewhere. And if we want to use it where we're actually modelling our thinking as a writer, then, we want to, whether it's a big book stand or, the whiteboard, a whiteboard stand where I can do that. But I think the day is so nice when it begins with us together on the floor, nearby. I know in secondary you're not bringing them down to the floor, but just the fact that you've got what the morning message is always going to be in, that it's always in the one place, so that we know we come in, especially in secondary, we come into the room. And so therefore, if you're in secondary schools, it might not be a morning message. I don't know, there'd be another great name for it, because you're not necessarily having your class in the morning, but something that would, and so I'm not saying every teacher in secondary should do this for every lesson necessarily. Otherwise, we've got students going, oh my goodness, I've got them coming out of my ears. They don't need them every lesson of the day. But certainly there's been some secondary schools that have said, do you know what, let's ensure that across a week everyone does it once, and let's say which day you're doing it so that they're getting it across a week.
Great for home group as well.
If that's how you start the day, absolutely. Home group time is a great place for that. It's where you're building that community. Home group, that's when you're together. And then, of course, in primary, most of us would have a book stand or an easel, a whiteboard with a ledge that we can rest that on. But gathering together is the time for that too. It's about that habit of knowing that we're always going to have something around that. But as I said, that might not go for a whole year. It might just go for a term. But I challenge people to, I've lived with it for a year, and no one wants to stop it. I find myself growing as a writer, and I find our community growing as thinkers and getting hooked into all the richness that comes from that time spent creating that one or two sentences each day.
It made me think of, in our day and age, well-being messages and spiritual messages that, a religious school might incorporate that into it. So,
Yes,
all different ways we can go with it.
Yes, yeah. But I particularly love, the idea that if we're talking, because I talk literacy, that we can use it, that we've got purpose for building relationships and community together, but that we can also bring in those elements of how are we reading this?
Yeah.
How was this written?
Yeah, because this is a literacy podcast. This is what we're on about.
Yes, yeah. That it's coming from, and I used that word intentionally before, giving them something to notice.
Yep.
And something, so if I'm reading it, what am I noticing? What am I using to read this? What am I, this is asking me I'm noticing this is asking me to think about something that's not written there. So I'm making an inference here about what this is, or this is trying to persuade me about something. So, I recognise what's going on here. Look at these words being used to, these superlatives, or look at this, or look at that, or, it's that in really micro, it's the big strategies that we're teaching across reading and writing, but letting us just throw something in each day that lets us see things that we might not have yet seen, or something that we're leading into, that activates the wondering and the interest because that's what we want our learners to be, active thinkers.
So tomorrow morning, how about starting a morning message?
Yeah. Are you going to write one for me?
I could, yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, we do all write a morning message to each other, basically.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
All right, so we might wrap that up there, Sharon. Do you think?
Oh, yes. It's probably enough said about a morning message, because it's absolutely, I'm hoping this is enough to really activate thinking about how it might have meaning and purpose in your own room or in your own class or in your own setting. And we would just love to see how that plays out for people. And maybe, I know I should never promise things that I haven't, yet got up somewhere, but maybe I'll post a few examples of some of my morning messages that I've written over time. In fact, I do need to just add that in the 1990s, the morning messages in one class, this is my Year 4 class, all had to do with a particular mystery that was going on. And so actually the morning message had a bit of a maths slant to it, because we were trying to solve this particular puzzle that was happening. Messages were arriving under our door each morning. And so the morning message partly was that message that had been poked under the door each morning. And yes, I knew who it was, but no one else in the class knew who it was, and I wasn't the one. But then I would always put that morning message, into the book, and then we'd write, there'd be me wondering some more around that. So I'm just saying sometimes they turn into bigger things than just one-off things. Sometimes it becomes an ongoing thing, and we never know where it's going to take us. And I think that's the important thing about it, is thinking what purpose and meaning can be used for.
Was that a particular read aloud that you were reading at the time?
No, it was all to do. Oh, do you know what? I'm sounding a bit vague on it, because it was around a read aloud. Yes, it was. It was an ongoing read aloud. Piece around that. So,
which is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And Sharon, you've got a book that you'd like to introduce.
Yes. Have been doing quite a bit of book shopping lately. And this one by Elise Gravel, not quite sure, is called Everybody. Why am I bringing this book this week? 3 reasons. 1, the message in the book is one that I think we all need. Everybody needs the message in this book. And when I read it to you, you'll see clearly why. It's beautifully written and illustrated by Elise Gravel. And so I think that's always a wonderful thing to point out to students, is that we've got some people who write and illustrate just like them, because that's their work, and especially if we are publishing with them, as we should be, that publishing means in thinking of all those things that the writer needs to do and the illustrator needs to do. And the third reason I'm bringing it is because I think it's a great mentor text, because it's got a pattern to it. And so from that point of view, it's a really easy one for us to bring to our students, to have them notice what this book is about, how it works, and for them to be able to create their own Everybody book. It's also great for a class book, to create a class book, everybody creating their own page as this works. But let's read it. It's called Everybody. Actually, everybody. That's how I should read it. Everybody is unique and different, but we are more similar than we think. Everybody has fears. Everybody has moments of joy and moments of sadness. Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody can learn from them. Everybody wants friends, and everybody can be a friend. Everybody gets angry sometimes. Everybody goes to the bathroom. Not all at once. Everybody needs help sometimes, and everybody likes to feel useful. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody gets embarrassed. Everybody feels tired from time to time, and everybody needs to take care of themselves. Everybody gets discouraged once in a while. Everybody needs to feel safe. Everybody fails sometimes. Everybody has hopes and dreams. Everybody has ideas. Everybody needs to be loved and accepted just as they are. Everybody deserves to be treated with respect. We are each unique, but we have so much in common. We are all human.
Lovely.
Isn't it? So, blurb, everybody has strengths, flaws, feelings, ideas and needs. Everybody. So, that's my pick for this week for all of those reasons that I said above. Author, illustrator,
Great class.
doing that work.
Class book.
Beautiful class book. And I could even see myself doing a morning message
Yes.
with Dear Everybody.
Yes.
We all or everybody needs, I might start that off, bringing that to them then as a book. I can't, you're right about, was it linked to a book, that other, a lot of things I do will link to books or, into, what do they notice about that?
Actually, I think if you're stuck for an idea, link it back to a read aloud or that you're doing at the time.
Yes, yeah. Draw from there.
Yep.
So, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Thank you, Phil,
Pleasure.
for, as always, being my trusted and faithful co-host. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We've loved to see that so many of you have subscribed to our episodes from all corners of the world. The Teacher's Toolkit podcast is all about giving you an insider's guide to top teaching tips, ideas, tools, techniques in literacy teaching and learning. Please subscribe to our weekly newsletter via the website. You will receive advance notice on blogs, podcasts, events, and ways to connect with us. Thanks again, Phil. Thanks to all of our listeners, and catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.